Welcome back, night owls and snuggly seekers of nighttime knowledge. Before we begin our cozy little expedition into the whimsical world of Labubu, do me a gentle favor. If you enjoy drifting off to tales of adorable mischief, mysterious origins, and the occasional absurd pun, go ahead and tap that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up and hit that bell so you never miss a dreamy detour into the world of bedtime storytelling. Tonight's episode? Oh, it's about Labubu, yes, the one with the pointy ears, mischievous grin, and the face that looks like it just got away with eating the last cookie. Not to be confused with Lafufu, the off-brand cousin that shows up at flea markets and always smells faintly of regret. Now, before we start our tale, let's set the vibe, shall we? Dim those lights. Tell your neighbors to quiet down, but nicely. Or bribe them with oat milk. Grab your pet or that emotionally unavailable houseplant. Snuggle in, take a big cozy breath, and pretend your bills don't exist for the next hour or two. And hey, if you're listening in from somewhere magical, or just your roommate's couch, drop your location in the comments. And tell me, would you adopt a Labubu? Be honest. All right, now that we've tucked the world away and climbed under our metaphorical blankie of lore, let's begin our story. Because once upon a time, in a world not too far from toy shelves and creative chaos, a curious little creature with a devilish smile tiptoed into the hearts of collectors everywhere. This is the story of Labubu. Chapter 1. The Origins, from Scribble to Scamp. Welcome back, dreamers. Or, if you're still here after the intro and haven't drifted off into a cozy oat milk coma, congratulations. You've officially made it to Chapter 1. Your reward? A soft, mischievous journey back in time, to the very beginning, before Labubu had shelves to sit on or collectors to haunt. Now, imagine a warm room, not too bright. A sketchbook sits on a desk, surrounded by tiny sculpting tools, pastel pens, and maybe a cat that knocks over everything on purpose. In this quiet corner of creativity, an artist once doodled a creature with wild hair, large round eyes, and a grin that said, "I just replaced your shampoo with glue." That creature was Labubu. Labubu was born not in a boardroom, not in a marketing lab, but in the hands of an artist named Casing Lung. If you've never heard of him, don't worry. You're about to fall asleep to his story whether you want to or not. Casing Lung is a Hong Kong-born artist and illustrator known for weaving strange, whimsical, and eerie elements into his artwork. Think, the kind of bedtime stories that are 10% nightmare, 90% oddly adorable. His work is full of contradiction, emotion, and that signature touch of creepy cute. Labubu is arguably his most iconic character, but it didn't start as a mass-produced figure. Nope, it began as a hand-drawn character in his art books. Some say Labubu came to Casing in a dream. Others say it was summoned by a cursed cup of instant noodles. But the truth? It was simply a reflection of Casing's love for storytelling through unconventional beauty. He once said he was drawn to creatures that are both frightening and lovable. Kind of like your tax bill if it wore a onesie. The personality that peeks through the plastic. Before it ever became a collectible, Labubu already had a personality. Mischievous but not mean. Playful but not polite. Labubu looks like the kind of creature that would steal your last fry, but also knit you a tiny scarf out of yarn it borrowed from your grandma. It was this strange balance, the gremlin meets guardian vibe, that caught people's attention. And let's be honest, who wouldn't want a bedtime protector with tiny claws and chaotic energy? Labubu was first introduced to the wider world through Casing Lung's The Monsters, art books and exhibits. These were filled with childlike creatures in surreal settings, often symbolic, often mysterious, always oddly soothing. At one point, a small, bug-eyed character with pointy ears and a giddy grin began to show up more and more in his pages. It had no name yet, no backstory, just vibes. But the world? It was already falling in love. Storytime becomes shelf time. Casing Lung was never in a rush to commercialize Labubu, but art has a funny way of escaping the canvas when it's ready, like toothpaste, or your emotions during an awkward family dinner. Eventually, toy companies began to notice the growing popularity of his characters. Among them was one company in particular that would become Labubu's home turf, Pop Mart. But we'll dive into that sugar-sweet business drama in Chapter 2. Right now, let's linger a little longer in the origins, because before there were blind boxes and resale markets, there were just scribbles and stories. Labubu was a creature of instinct, curiosity, and chaotic bedtime spirit. It lived not in stores but in imagination, peeking around the corners of dreams, ready to make you laugh or slightly question your reality. And like any good bedtime legend, it grew by word of mouth. Fans of Cassing Lung began sharing Labubu drawings, speculating about its personality. Was it a forest spirit? A tiny demon with good manners? A long-lost cousin of the gremlins who moisturize? We still don't fully know, and maybe that's the point. Labubu, like all great storybook creatures, exists somewhere in the space between explanation and imagination, and in that space, it thrives. Chapter 2. Enter Pop Mart. Mischief goes mainstream. Ah, capitalism. Like a warm blanket woven from profit margins and collectability. But not all capitalism is loud. Some sneak in softly, with big eyes, tiny fangs, and a grin that says, "You'll buy 5 more of me before this week ends." That's where Pop Mart enters our story, a company that sells surprises. Pop Mart, officially known as Pop Mart International Group Limited, started off like most great bedtime villains, quietly. Founded in 2010 in Beijing, this now massive company had one goal: sell cute, collectible toys with just the right mix of joy, mystery, and psychological manipulation. Okay, calm psychological manipulation. The company hit gold with blind boxes, those little sealed containers where you don't know what you're getting until you open it. Think Kinder Surprise, but instead of chocolate, it's a potential dopamine spike and minor wallet damage. This strategy plays on the collector's dream and gambler's curse. You'll keep opening until you get the rare one, or until your shelf collapses under the weight of duplicates. It was only a matter of time before Pop Mart looked for something more mischievous, and that's when they met Labubu, the curious partnership. Sometime in the mid-2010s, Pop Mart and Cassing Lung came together like a sleepy child and their comfort blanket. Cassing's unique art, emotional, eerie, and filled with depth, wasn't what Pop Mart usually sold. Their roster had already been filled with pastel bunnies and sugary-smiled mascots. But Labubu? This little gremlin brought chaos to cuteness. It had personality. It had edge. It looked like it would whisper bedtime stories while stealing your socks. Pop Mart knew a star when they saw one. In 2018, Labubu made its big debut as part of the Monsters collection under the Pop Mart label. And the rest? Well, the rest is still probably stuck in customs because everyone wanted one. The explosion. Sales soared. Blind boxes featuring Labubu started flying off shelves across Asia, then Europe, then North America. Suddenly, your co-worker, who never seemed like the toy type, had a Labubu perched next to their keyboard. TikToks featuring unboxings became a thing. Display shelves evolved into altars, and some very brave people started tattooing Labubu on their bodies, because nothing says lifelong commitment like a vinyl gremlin with baby teeth. Why the hype? Well, aside from being objectively adorable in a gremlin meets forest spirit way, Labubu struck a weird emotional chord. It wasn't just a toy. It had vibe. It was chaotic good. It didn't try to be perfect. It thrived in oddity. Labubu looked like how most of us feel on a Monday morning, and we felt seen. Plus, Pop Mart did something genius. Limited editions. Oh, the sweet seduction of scarcity. Glitter versions, Halloween costumes, glow-in-the-dark Labubus. Each drop created a frenzy. People queued, traded, and sometimes fought over them, gently in line with passive-aggressive tweets. It became an event, a ritual, a quiet obsession. The bedtime impact. You might be thinking, okay, but what does this have to do with storytelling and sleep? Well, everything. Labubu isn't just a character, it's a visual lullaby, a pocket-sized daydream, the kind of thing that reminds us it's okay to be a little weird, a little wild, and a little worn out. There's comfort in knowing something this odd can be so loved. Collectors began telling their own stories about Labubu. This one kept me company during finals. This was my first paycheck treat. My ex gave me this. Yes, I kept the Labubu. No, I don't regret it. It became a bedtime companion for adults who still needed a little magic, a little mischief, and a shelf full of smiling goblins reminding them they're not alone. Still awake? Chapter 3. The Fairy Zoo. Family, Friends, and Feral Cousins. So, you thought Labubu was a lone ranger? A solo chaos agent in the night, tiptoeing through your dreams with a mischievous grin and limited edition ears. Oh, sweet, sleepy soul. Labubu is only one member of an entire oddball family called the Fairy Zoo. This isn't your local petting zoo. This is a whimsical, often chaotic, ever-expanding collection of creatures born from the same delightful weirdness that gave us Labubu. And like any good bedtime story, it includes foxes, ghosts, moon bunnies, and creatures that look like they might file your taxes while floating upside down. So snuggle in. You're about to meet Labubu's crew, the foxes, the bats, and the what even is that. Let's start with Zimomo, Labubu's dreamy cousin and arguably the most relatable member of the Fairy Zoo. Zimomo is a soft, round, often sleepy little creature who looks like it lives off matcha and introspection. Unlike Labubu's manic mischief, Zimomo radiates please let me nap energy. It's what you'd get if you turned a sigh into a plushie. Then there's Dimu, the childlike wonder of the bunch. With dreamy eyes and hair that looks like a cumulus cloud with good conditioner, Dimu is all about innocence, wonder, and looking like they read your diary and just want to hug you. Oh, and don't forget Skull Panda, the edgy older cousin who smells like nail polish remover and existential dread. Okay, Skull Panda technically isn't in the Fairy Zoo canon, but the vibes? Immaculate. Think goth baby with emotional intelligence. And of course, we have other Labubu variants themselves. Pirate Labubu Forest Spirit, Labubu Mummy Labubu dressed like it's your birthday Labubu, and the Oops All Glitter Labubu no one can seem to find. Each one with a slightly different look, but always the same expression. I just did something, and I won't tell you what. Labubu's lore. Mischief with myth. Here's the part no one talks about at the unboxing parties. Labubu's not just a character. There's lore. Well, soft lore, cozy lore, lore you can hug. Labubu comes from a mystical forest world full of secrets, a place where magical creatures coexist, and every tree stump might be a portal to something whimsical or deeply confusing. Each member of the Fairy Zoo brings a slice of that world with them, like guests showing up to your bedtime story with snacks. They don't always speak. They don't always need to. Sometimes their expression tells the tale. Wide eyes, mischievous grin, and body language that says, yes, I did eat your leftover cheesecake, and I'd do it again. Collectors have made up their own interpretations of who's related to who. Some say Zimomo is Labubu's introverted twin. Others claim Dimu and Labubu had a falling out over gummy bears and haven't spoken since. There are fan comics, custom art, and even plushie dramas. Yes, plushie dramas, reenacting this mystical universe. Is any of it official? Nope. But bedtime stories don't need rules. They need vibes. Why the Fairy Zoo matters at bedtime. Here's the soft truth. We don't just collect toys. We collect comfort. And the Fairy Zoo is a menagerie of emotional support critters. Labubu gives us mischief. Zimomo gives us peace. Dimu gives us wonder. Together, they become your dreamtime entourage, a cast of companions that show up just as your eyelids start to flutter. In a world of deadlines, emails, and 3-week shipping delays, it's a gift to have characters who ask for nothing, except maybe a spot on your shelf and the occasional head pat. Chapter 4. Clone Wars and Lafufu, a mischievous scandal. Every good bedtime story needs a little drama. And no, we're not talking about your childhood nemesis who never returned your holographic Pokémon card. We're talking about the black market underbelly of cuteness, the forbidden alley of collectibles, the place where Labubu becomes Lafufu. Yes, Lafufu. The name alone sounds like it was whispered by a goblin who's trying to sell you knockoff Crocs. So, tuck yourself in tight. we're going undercover. When Mischief meets Marketplace. With Labubu's popularity came a predictable side effect. Fakes. You know the type. Those nearly but not quite versions of your favorite characters. Maybe the eyes are a little too big. The grin, slightly crooked. The packaging says, "Made with love," but smells suspiciously like permanent marker. And thus, Lafufu was born. An imposter. A counterfeit. A creature that looks like Labubu after pulling an all-nighter fueled by expired fruit punch and self-doubt. They started showing up on sketchy sites, pop-up shops, allegedly even hiding in some vending machines next to the mystery capsules filled with broken promises and erasers shaped like sushis. The emotional toll of a fake. Collectors began sharing horror stories. One person ordered what they thought was the glow-in-the-dark space Labubu, only to receive a melted-looking creature with one ear and the eyes of someone who's seen too much. Another unboxed a rare Labubu that turned out to be not plastic, but clay, handmade, soggy, smelled like feet. And yet, despite the heartbreak, the Lafufu underground economy grew. Because where demand soars, supply, or at least imitation, follows, often poorly glued and with mismatched paint. How to spot a Lafufu in the wild. So, here's your sleepy detective checklist for spotting the fakes. Price too good to be true? Run, or at least sleep on it. No Pop Mart branding? It's probably a Lafufu. The smile looks more "I need therapy" than "I'm full of secrets"? Yeah, that's a red flag. Does it smell like regret and dish soap? You guessed it. If you accidentally bought a Lafufu, don't be too hard on yourself. Give it a name, make it your emotional support gremlin, and maybe use it as a doorstop. Every creature deserves a home, even if it's a little cursed. Chapter 5. The Labubu Lifestyle. Fans, collectors, and community. Now that we've survived the great Lafufu crisis, let's curl up into something warmer. Because Labubu isn't just a toy, it's a lifestyle, a mood, a quiet rebellion wrapped in vinyl. A statement that says, "Yes, I collect adorable misfits. No, I will not explain myself." Meet the collectors. Across the world, from Tokyo to Toronto, entire communities of fans have come together around their love for Labubu. And they're not casual about it. These are people who build display cases with spotlights, temperature control, and velvet cushions. Trade Labubus like ancient scrolls, carefully wrapped, verified, and sometimes blessed by the collectible gods. Wait in line at 5 a.m. for the Monsters Limited Edition Series 12.5, but with a little hat. Start YouTube channels unboxing toys with the reverence of ancient relics. Tattoo Labubu on their ankle, shoulder, or heart, sometimes all three. It's not just about owning the toy, it's about being part of a story, a community of people who find joy, mischief, and just a smidge of emotional healing in a tiny creature with pointy ears and soft chaos energy. Custom Labubu art. Some artists have taken Labubu to the next level, painting, sculpting, and modifying their figures into new versions. Labubu as Sailor Moon. Labubu in a bubble bath. Labubu wearing Crocs. Labubu but 3 feet tall and filled with candy. There are Labubu-themed cafes, meetups, and merch drops. Someone somewhere even made Labubu crocheted pajamas. We're not saying we cried. We're saying if we did, it was wholesome. The language of Labubu. Labubu doesn't speak, but that hasn't stopped fans from giving it a voice. Some say Labubu would sound like a squirrel who just discovered philosophy. Others imagine it speaking only in riddles and puns. One brave soul insisted Labubu would communicate solely through memes and emotionally charged cat videos. Whatever voice you imagine, it speaks to you. Softly, sleepily, mischievously. Like a gremlin who wants to know how your day went before it steals your charger. If you've nodded off, Labubu is proud. If not, stay with me. Just one more dreamy chapter. Chapter 6. The future is fuzzy. Where Labubu goes from here. As our sleepy stroll through Labubu's history comes to a close, it's time to turn our gaze forward. Because even creatures of chaos and bedtime magic have futures to dream about. So, What's next for our favorite mischief maker? Digital dreams. There's talk, quiet, fluttery toy collector gossip about Labubu going digital. Animated series? Maybe. Augmented reality. Labubus that follow you around your house. Terrifying, but yes. NFTs? Well, we're not going to open that can of worms before bed. Some collectors are already using Labubu in digital journaling, fan animations, and even virtual reality showrooms. Soon, you might not just collect Labubu, you might hang out with one, in the metaverse, or, let's be honest, in your dreams. Endlessly evolving. New Labubu designs continue to drop. Seasonal, special, limited, and unexpected. From astronaut suits to clown costumes, from glittery tiaras to tiny devil horns. Labubu is ever-changing, ever-charming, and ever ready to sneak into your heart. And maybe that's the point. Labubu reminds us that mischief is okay, that weirdness is lovable, that dead time doesn't have to be boring. It can be magical, mysterious, and just a little unhinged. Our final snuggle. So as you drift off, whether you're a lifelong Labubu fan or someone who just needed a gentle voice to fall asleep to, know this. You've spent the night with a legend. A creature made not just of vinyl but of vibes, of stories whispered in moonlight, of collectors' gasps, of tiny surprises tucked into cardboard boxes. Labubu doesn't say goodnight, it just gives you a wink, and probably steals one of your socks. Thank you for joining us on this mischievous bedtime tale. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to subscribe, give us a gentle little thumbs up, and turn on post notifications so you never miss another cozy tale from the vinyl void. Drop a comment letting us know where you're listening from, and if you'd ever adopt a Lafufu. And remember, if you wake up in the night and hear a soft giggle, it's probably just your Labubu. Or your cat. Either way, sleep tight and stay mischievous.